Imagine this. You're standing on a stage, but you've never seen it before. A spotlight burns into your eyes. In front of you, shadows in the shape of people roar with applause. You don't remember walking here. You don't even know your lines. Behind you, a curtain slowly closes and a voice, eerily similar to yours, echoes from nowhere. You're moved. What do? You try to step back, but the floor creaks with consequences. You try to speak, but your voice trembles with uncertainty, and then it hits you. The applause wasn't for you. It was for the role you were supposed to play. The rules, you were never told them. The game, you didn't know you were even in one. The stakes, everything. This is life, not as a journey, a blessing, or a gift, but as a rigged simulation you were dropped into without instruction. A chessboard where you play pawn, bishop, and opponent at once. A digital world in analog disguise. And just like in any game, there are levels, traps, power-ups, and hacks. But here's the catch. Unlike the games you know, this one doesn't want you to know it's a game. It dresses up its mechanics in emotions, fear, pride, guilt. It hides its currency behind illusions, money, fame, identity. It punishes deviation with loneliness and rewards conformity with sedation. You're handed scripts, get a job, find the one, buy the house, die with a smile, and called a failure if you ad-lib a single line. Ask yourself, when was the last time you made a decision without calculating how it would look rather than how it would feel? Have you ever caught yourself playing a role so perfectly you forgot it wasn't you? What if the real world you cling to is just a more convincing level of fiction? You were born into a maze and taught to love its walls. You were given a character to play, maybe the overachiever, the rebel, the caretaker, and warned never to break it, never to glitch. But sometimes late at night, don't you feel it? That strange aching pull beneath the surface, that haunting suspicion that something is off. As if you're following a script written by someone who doesn't know you at all. You wake up, you do your rituals, you perform, you chase points, salary, likes, status. You level up, promotions, degrees, investments. But does any of it feel real? Or does it feel like you're just pressing buttons on a controller you don't understand? Because here's the terrifying possibility. What if life isn't about discovering who you are, but remembering that you were always playing? And if it is a game, then who wrote the rules? Why were you never shown the menu screen? And most important of all, what happens when you stop playing by the rules? Because once you start questioning the game, something strange begins to happen. The patterns unravel. The scripts lose their grip. You see people still sleepwalking through levels you've already glitched through. And you wonder, could it be hacked? Could it be won? Or maybe the better question is this: what if the only way to win is to stop playing by the rules entirely? But be warned, the moment you begin to see life this way, you can never unsee it. The illusion begins to crack. The faces you thought were real become masks. The dreams you chased reveal themselves as someone else's code. Yet in that terrifying collapse lies your only chance at freedom. Because the system doesn't fear failure, it feeds on it. What it fears is awareness. So ask yourself again, if life is just a game, who's holding the controller? And what happens when you take it back? Keep going. You've just stepped into the tutorial level. Now it's time to see what you're really up against. You're not supposed to question the game. From the moment you opened your eyes in this world, the programming began. not with commands typed in code, but with lullabies and smiles, punishments and praise. The world didn't hand you truth. It handed you stories. Stories wrapped in parental approval, religious dogma, national pride, academic rankings, and social expectations. And like any good player, you memorized your role until the story became indistinguishable from your identity. But here's what no one tells you. The most dangerous prison is the one that convinces you it's home. Carl Jung once said, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul." And he was right, because in the depths of your unconscious lies a truth too heavy for most, that the you think you are was shaped, crafted by others. You didn't design your desires, you inherited them. You were told success means achievement, so you chased titles. You were told love means sacrifice, so you betrayed yourself for acceptance. You were told truth means obedience, so you silenced your doubts and followed the herd. But beneath all of that, there is something wild, sacred, and untouched, a self that has been buried beneath layers of what philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre called bad faith, the constant lie we tell ourselves to avoid the terror of freedom, the terror of having no preset meaning, the terror of having to choose. And that is the hidden problem. Not that life is meaningless, but that we were told it had one meaning. Not that we are trapped, but that we were trained to decorate our cage. Not that we are powerless, but that we were taught to fear our own power. Society teaches conformity under the guise of safety, but safety is just sedated control. The school system doesn't teach you how to think. It teaches you how to comply, stand in line, don't question authority, memorize facts, regurgitate, get the grades, get the job, get the mortgage, die with dignity. Friedrich Nietzsche, the madman prophet of modern thought, once warned that modern civilization was manufacturing what he called last men. Comfortable, predictable, passive beings who would rather be entertained than awakened. They blink, he said. They have left the places where it was hard to live. We are those last men in many ways, swiping, scrolling, numbing, working for weekend dopamine hits, performing curated versions of ourselves on screens, desperate for digital applause. But what if the applause is fake? What if the game has no real prize? Just an endless treadmill of upgrades. Arthur Schopenhauer called life a pendulum swinging between pain and boredom. A bleak view, yes, but one that reflects the modern cycle. The fear of suffering drives us to achieve, but the fruits of achievement are often tasteless. We either strive and suffer, or succeed and stagnate. But maybe the real suffering isn't in striving or stagnating. Maybe it's in forgetting that you're free to choose something else entirely. You see, the real game isn't the one on the surface. It's not the job, the house, the partner, the identity. It's not even the success or failure. The real game is existential. It's the game beneath the game. Viktor Frankl, who endured the horrors of a Nazi concentration camp, wrote in Man's Search for Meaning that between stimulus and response there is a space, and in that space lies our power to choose. That space is the arena of the real game. Not the environment around you, but the consciousness within you. But here's the twist. That space shrinks with every unexamined belief you inherit. Every time you act from programming instead of awareness, that space dies a little, and the game tightens its grip. Why does this happen? Because the brain loves efficiency. It's a survival machine. Once a pattern works, socially, emotionally, or financially. It stores it, and what gets stored becomes default. The longer you run the same loops, the more invisible they become. Eventually, the brain doesn't ask if it should respond, it just does. That's not consciousness, that's automation. Aldous Huxley saw this coming. In Brave New World, he didn't warn of a world ruled by fear, but one drowned in pleasure, where control comes not through oppression, but through comfort, where people are not forced into silence, they are seduced into irrelevance. Sound familiar? You weren't beaten into submission, you were entertained into apathy. The greatest enemy of awakening isn't pain, it's numbing comfort. That is the hidden programming, not the explicit rules, but the invisible one. You must be successful to be worthy. You must be liked to be safe. You must follow the rules to be good. You must suppress your chaos to be lovable. These are not truths. These are control scripts, mental malware. And you accepted them because you didn't know there was an option to reject them. But now, the question starts to take root in your mind. If all of this was programmed into me, who am I without the code? And this is where the system starts to tremble, because it has no defense against a mind that begins to question not just the world, but the self it has created. Once you pull at that thread, the entire tapestry starts to unravel, because what you'll find isn't chaos. What you'll find isn't madness. What you'll find is something ancient, raw, and impossibly powerful. The beginning of you, the unfiltered version. The player, not the character. The coder, not the code. But before you can rewrite the game, you must first see how deep the script runs. And as we descend further, you'll see just how much of your reality has been designed without your consent. The question is no longer if the game is rigged. It's how much of you has become part of the rigging. You didn't notice the shift, not at first. It didn't arrive with a loud alarm or an obvious breakdown. It was subtle, a growing dullness in your mornings, a quiet panic in your stillness, that hollow echo in your chest that whispers something's missing, even when everything seems fine. That's how the game traps you, not with violence, but with invisible consequence. Because the problem isn't just that you've been playing a game, it's that you've forgotten you were playing. And when the player forgets, the character takes over. Let's get painfully honest. How much of your daily life is a performance? How often do you filter your feelings, silence your instincts, or smile when you want to scream? Because that's what your character would do. Every time you do that, a fracture forms, a hairline crack between your authentic self and your game self. And over time, those cracks don't heal. They multiply. They call it burnout. They call it depression. They call it anxiety. But what if these aren't mental illnesses in the way we've been taught to understand them? What if they're emergency flares from your buried self, warning you that the script is killing you? There's something deeply cruel about this game. It promises meaning but offers mimicry. You're told to be unique, yet punished for standing out. You're told to find your truth, then marketed a million fake ones. Even rebellion is commodified. Your pain is repackaged and sold back to you as therapy, wellness apps, productivity hacks. But nothing changes because the consequences aren't just mental, they're existential. Every time you betray your own inner compass, to please someone, gain approval, or chase a badge of success, you teach your nervous system that your truth is dangerous. That survival means self-erasure, and your biology listens, your neurons rewire, your identity bends, and slowly your inner fire dims. Let's go deeper. Neuroscience confirms it. The brain, your so-called command center, operates largely on default. According to studies, up to 95% of your thoughts, decisions, and emotions are governed by unconscious patterns. Most of them were set in childhood, when your brain was still trying to figure out the rules of the world. You absorbed these rules not because they were true, but because they ensured love, safety, and inclusion. You learned to prioritize predictability over authenticity, belonging over truth. You were taught to fear your own chaos. And what happens to a person who silences their inner chaos for too long? They become numb, flat, hyper-functional, but hollow. They achieve, but never arrive. They smile, but never feel safe. They're alive, but not awake. Here's where the psychological roots deepen into culture. You live in a society that glorifies the mask. Look around. The avatars are everywhere. Social media personas curated to perfection. Dating profiles optimized like ad campaigns. Professional identities sculpted for LinkedIn approval. We're all performing, exchanging truth for validation. The game rewards surface over substance, packaging over depth, speed over stillness, noise over knowing. And it's not just damaging, it's dehumanizing. Because when everyone's playing a character, no one sees each other anymore. You're not connecting, you're colliding, mask to mask, ego to ego, code to code. Do you ever wonder why so many conversations feel shallow? Why love feels elusive? Why intimacy seems like a lost language? Because you've been taught to fear the one thing that could shatter the illusion. Vulnerability. In the game, vulnerability is weakness. It breaks the fourth wall. It exposes the glitch. And the system can't survive exposure. Here's the terrifying truth. Most people will go their entire lives without ever meeting themselves. They'll die as well-trained characters, never glitching, never asking, never breaking free. That's the cost of forgetting it's a game. Now imagine the collective weight of this unconscious play acting. A planet full of masked performers chasing prizes they don't want, feeling emotions they don't understand, competing in rules they didn't write. Entire industries exist to keep this going. Advertising, politics, education, entertainment. It's not a conspiracy. It's worse. It's momentum. Nobody is steering the machine anymore. The game runs itself now, and it's eating us alive. It's no accident that depression is now a global epidemic, that suicide rates climb even in the wealthiest nations, that millions live in chronic anxiety despite unprecedented comfort. These are not anomalies. These are symptoms of a deeper infection, one we've normalized so deeply we barely notice it. We are starving, not for food, not for success, but for truth. Not the kind of truth you can read in a book or hear from a guru, but the kind you remember when you finally stop pretending. And yet, there's something strangely beautiful about this tragedy. Because the very pain you're trying to numb, it's not your enemy, it's your compass. It's the part of you that remembers, that refuses to die quietly, that dares to ask, what if there's more than this? That question, the one you've buried under productivity, perfection, and people-pleasing, is the beginning of the awakening glitch, the bug in the system, the rebel code. But the game won't let go easily. It will seduce you, guilt you, gaslight you, punish you for trying to wake up. Because if you stop playing by the rules, you expose the rules. If you expose the rules, others might follow. And if enough players rebel, the game crashes. So the system doubles down. It distracts you with algorithms, with outrage, with empty pleasures. It does everything to keep you playing, but the glitch is already inside you. It's every time you ask, why does this feel wrong? It's every time you feel that tug to scream, cry, run, live. It's every time you choose to stop and feel. You're not broken, you're waking up. And if you keep going, keep feeling, keep questioning, you'll start to see something miraculous. The walls were never real. The rules were never yours. And the self you thought you were, just a shadow of who you might become. So let the system tremble, let the code stutter, let your glitch grow louder, because just beyond this breakdown lies your first taste of real freedom. It begins not with a revolution, but with a pause. Not a grand speech or a dramatic act, but a moment of silence where you stop pretending, where for just a breath you choose not to perform. You feel the mask melt just slightly. You feel the script loosen in your hands. And in that stillness, something ancient awakens. The rebellion doesn't scream, it whispers, "What if you didn't have to play this way?" Not play less, not quit the game, but play differently, on your terms, with new rules. This is your glitch becoming sacred, not a flaw, but a gateway, the crack in the matrix where the real light gets in. To rebel against the game, you don't have to burn the world down. You simply have to remember who you are before the world told you who to be. That's not poetic, that's neurological. Because the moment you begin to choose awareness over autopilot, your brain starts to rewire. Neuroplasticity kicks in. Pathways weaken, new ones form. The self you thought was fixed, your personality, your habits, your fears, turn out to be malleable code. You're not static, you're programmable. And now, you're holding the keyboard. But first, you must unlearn the default operating system. And this is where most turn back, because unlearning is painful. It means mourning the old self, the one who was praised for compliance, the one who was loved for being easy, the one who found comfort in knowing their place. But that comfort was a cage. To break free, you must confront the myth that safety equals happiness. You must abandon the false sanctuary of certainty and step into the holy fire of uncertainty. Only there can the real game begin. Let them do rebellion for what it truly is. Not a war against the world, but a reclamation of your inner authority. It means deciding that your inner truth matters more than external validation. It means letting discomfort become your compass, not your enemy. It means rejecting the script, not with rage, but with clarity. Ask yourself, what if success isn't about accumulation, but alignment? What if purpose isn't something you find, but something you create, moment by moment, choice by choice? What if peace isn't the absence of chaos, but your willingness to sit with it without running? This rebellion has been waged before, by mystics who walked away from empires, by artists who tore reality open with a brush or a verse, by philosophers who shattered paradigms with questions sharper than knives. They didn't wait for permission. They didn't seek approval. They simply refused to forget. You can too. But how? How do you start hacking the game when the game is everywhere? Step 1. Radical self-inquiry. This isn't journaling for likes. This is shadow work. It's asking, what beliefs do I hold that were never truly mine? It's digging into the wounds behind your goals. It's facing the truth that maybe, just maybe, your ambition was born from inadequacy, not inspiration. Carl Jung called this integrating the shadow, the process of reclaiming the rejected, suppressed, feared parts of yourself. not to fix them, not to banish them, but to embrace them as essential to your wholeness. Step 2. Conscious rule breaking. Pick one rule today, just one, that you obey without questioning. Now question it, and then if it doesn't serve your truth, break it with intention. Speak when you'd normally stay silent. Rest when guilt tells you to grind. Say no without explanation. Say yes without apology. Every time you do this, you rewrite your internal code. You create a new neural map, one not driven by fear, but by freedom. Step 3. Reclaim play. This may sound strange, but remember, life is a game. And what is a game without joy? You've been taught that play is childish. But what if it's holy? What if dancing, laughing, creating, wandering, without agenda, are forms of rebellion in a world obsessed with productivity? Play is how the soul stretches, how it remembers its infinite nature. The game you were given was rigged, but that doesn't mean all games are. You can design your own, one where success is measured in moments of authenticity, one where failure is feedback, not condemnation, one where progress is not linear but cyclical, like the seasons, like breath, like healing. In this new game, you don't perform, you express. You don't climb ladders, you dig roots. You don't fit in, you belong to yourself. And that changes everything, because here's the real hack. The more you deprogram yourself, the more you'll start to see the game for what it really is. A stage, a simulation, a canvas. And the moment you stop reacting and start choosing, truly choosing, you step into what Viktor Frankl called the last of human freedoms, the ability to choose your response in any situation. That is your ultimate agency, your sacred control. Let them call you irrational. Let them call you rebellious. Let them call you lost. All revolutionaries are accused of madness before the world adapts to their sanity. You're not lost. You're walking off the map. And if you keep going, if you keep peeling away the lies, the masks, the expectations, you will reach the threshold, the place where the game can no longer find you. Because you're not playing anymore. You're creating. You're not surviving the game. You're rewriting it. And when that shift happens, when you fully step into authorship of your own life, the system starts to lose its power over you. The simulation flickers, and what was once a prison begins to look a lot like a playground. Imagine standing at the edge of everything you've ever known. No noise, no maps, no expectations, just silence and a strange, sacred stillness. You've rebelled. You've shed the mask. You've stepped out of the game, its rules crumbling behind you like ruins of an empire you no longer recognize. But now, standing in this raw expanse, a new question arises. Not, what should I do now? But something far more terrifying. Who am I without the game? This is the final test. Not of strength, but of silence. Not of rebellion, but of remembrance. Because here lies the truth, the one so powerful, so disorienting, that entire civilizations have built distractions just to avoid it. You were never just a player. You are the game itself. Not a pawn on the board, but the board, the dice, the rules, and the unfolding story. This isn't metaphor, this is metaphysics. Look closer. Everything you've believed about life being something that happens to you, random, external, unpredictable, was the illusion. The ultimate hack, the most devastating realization is this: you are not inside the simulation. The simulation is inside you. What does that mean? It means that every thought, every judgment, every story you carry acts as a filter, a lens, a projector. You've mistaken the movie on the screen for reality, forgetting that the film, its lighting, tone, and genre is all being beamed from inside your own mind. You've been living inside a mirror, and every time you curse the reflection, you are only battling yourself. That fear of being unloved, projected. That story of not being enough, projected. That desperate chase for meaning, projected onto a world that only ever reflected your own silence back at you. This is why the game hurt, not because it was cruel, but because you played it asleep, mistaking shadows for truths. The mirror never lied. It only reflected what you believed. And now here you stand, no mask, no armor, no pretense, face to face with your own gaze. And here comes the most sacred glitch of all, the realization that there was never anything to escape. You didn't need to beat the game. You only needed to wake up and realize you wrote it. Every obstacle, a lesson you crafted. Every heartbreak, a mirror for parts of yourself crying out to be felt. Every longing, a whisper from your deeper self, guiding you home. You thought freedom was outside the walls, but freedom was the awareness that there were never any walls to begin with. Now, what will you do with this truth? Most people, when they brush against this realization, panic. The ego trembles. It says, if I am the creator, then I am also the destroyer. If I am the source, then I can't blame anyone anymore. If I'm the writer, then I must take full responsibility for the story. And that responsibility is terrifying, because it means your suffering was never random. It means that every script you followed, every pattern, belief, trauma, was something you agreed to, consciously or unconsciously. But it also means something else. It means you can choose again. You can rewrite the code, not just spiritually, neurologically, psychologically, emotionally. You are never stuck because you are not fixed. Identity is a tool, not a prison. The person you've been, just a version. The beliefs you held, just a phase in the code. The life you thought was fate, just a story you forgot you were telling. Now, for the first time, you see the control panel. You see how your attention sculpts reality. You see how your emotions signal your alignment. You see how your choices, not your circumstances, are the true architecture of your existence. And suddenly, it all makes sense. The great teachers didn't preach rules, they pointed back to the mirror. Jesus said, "The kingdom of heaven is within you." Buddha said, "All that we are is the result of what we have thought." Rumi whispered, "You are not a drop in the ocean. You are the entire ocean in a drop." They weren't being poetic, they were describing the mechanics of reality. You are reality dreaming itself into form. And now you're lucid. You're dreaming with awareness, playing with consciousness, creating not from fear, but from presence. So, what now? Now you live differently. You stop chasing outcomes because you understand that reality bends to your inner state. You stop fearing failure because you realize failure is just feedback, data for a higher game. You stop seeking approval because you remember you are the source, not the seeker. You begin to move from inspiration, not desperation, from joy, not guilt, from truth, not survival. And everything changes. Your relationships deepen, not because others change, but because you see them as they are, no longer distorted by your wounds. Your work becomes sacred, not because of status, but because it flows from your essence. Your suffering transforms, not into bliss, but into meaning. And that's all suffering ever wanted. You return to the world, not to fit in, but to radiate. You don't need to escape anymore. You don't need to rebel anymore. You are no longer against the game. You have become the one who designs it, and design you shall. With every breath, with every pause, with every choice to return, not to the ego's script, but to the truth behind the script. You are not your name, not your story, not your fear, not your past. You are the awareness that holds all those things, the canvas, the brush, the color, the light. And when you truly see that, when you embody that truth, life doesn't just become a game worth playing. It becomes art. So now, a final question, not to answer, but to carry like a flame. If life is your game, your mirror, your creation, what masterpiece will you paint before the dream ends?